Hey guys, tonight we're venturing back to a time and place so chilly. Even your trusty electric blanket and hot cocoa wouldn't stand a chance. Picture yourself in the harsh, unforgiving cold of the Viking Age. It's northern Europe around the 9th century, and the icy winds are whipping against your face. Snowflakes land softly on your eyelashes, turning them into tiny icicles as you shiver uncontrollably. Honestly, just thinking about it, you'd probably tap out after 15 minutes without central heating. I mean, let's be honest here, you definitely wouldn't survive long enough to even regret forgetting your fuzzy socks. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop a quick comment below, letting me know your location and the local time you're tuning in from. Let's see how far our virtual Viking voyage is traveling tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself stepping cautiously over ice-crusted earth, the sound of your boots crunching with every careful movement. The cold air bites at your cheeks, stings your lips, and makes your lungs feel strangely brittle. Above, the northern lights dance silently, a beautiful but deceptively cruel spectacle that offers no warmth, only the teasing illusion of comfort. And you start to wonder, how on earth did the Vikings, those legendary warriors, seafarers, and explorers, survive night after night of this relentless, bone-chilling cold? As you wrap your arms tighter around your body, desperately trying to conserve heat, you consider how much you take modern warmth for granted. Those Vikings didn't have space heaters humming reassuringly in the background or thermally insulated winter jackets engineered by NASA scientists. No, they had harsh wool animal skins, and maybe, if lucky, a blazing fire to stave off hypothermia. And yet, somehow, these ancient peoples thrived. They sailed through icy waters, settled frozen lands, and fought fearlessly through the kind of winters that make you seriously question whether or not hibernation should be an option for humans. Imagine lying down to sleep on frozen ground, feeling the cold seep into your bones as your breath crystallizes in midair. Your bed isn't a soft mattress topped with memory foam or a warm duvet. It's layers of rough hides and maybe some dried grass beneath you, prickling and itchy. Comfort wasn't exactly priority number one. Survival was the name of the game. But, despite the conditions that might feel intolerable to a modern-day suburbanite, Vikings somehow managed to get a decent night's rest, at least decent enough to wake up, raid a few monasteries, and explore continents. But we'll get to that later. Historians still argue about just how resilient these ancient northern Europeans truly were. Some suggest that their legendary toughness was partly due to genetic adaptation. Others credit their sophisticated clothing techniques, and yet more believe they were simply stubborn enough to ignore the cold until it gave up trying to bother them. The real truth probably lies somewhere between clever survival tactics and sheer, uncompromising stubbornness. After all, Vikings weren't exactly known for backing down from a challenge. You glance at your hands and notice they're beginning to lose feeling. Your fingertips are turning an unsettling shade of blue, a gentle reminder from your body that it isn't built for this kind of torture. And yet, those ancient Vikings sailed across seas even colder than this, rowing relentlessly through frigid waves while water splashed and froze to their clothing. You start to question your own limits, and you realize how truly astounding their resilience must have been. As you trudge forward, every step feeling heavier, you start to feel a strange kind of admiration for these people who lived a millennium before central heating and fleece-lined gloves became the norm. Even with today's modern technology, you'd probably complain endlessly if your thermostat dipped below comfortable room temperature. Yet Vikings endured temperatures that regularly plunged far below freezing, with little more than determination, resourcefulness, and perhaps a hearty sense of humor to see them through. Of course, humor probably played a bigger role than you imagine. Imagine making jokes around a crackling fire, perhaps about how Eric lost his left sandal again to the ice, or how Olaf always seemed to fall asleep directly on the snow, snoring loud enough to frighten away polar bears. After all, if you couldn't laugh at frostbite, the dark winter nights might become unbearable. Suddenly, snapped from your thoughts as another gust of icy wind whips around you, reminding you again how completely unprepared your delicate modern self is for such brutality. The Vikings certainly weren't invincible. They got cold, frostbitten, and sometimes even perished from the chill, but overall, they managed something astounding, thriving in conditions that would send most of us diving under heated blankets indefinitely. So, tonight, as you settle deeper into your comfortably warm sheets, safe behind insulated walls and double-glazed windows, spare a thought or two for those hardy souls who had none of these luxuries, who somehow faced nights darker, colder, and far less forgiving than you or I can easily imagine. And while you drift towards sleep, think about how, even in the harshest environments, humans have always found ingenious ways to survive. Take another deep breath. Let the bitter cold fade into a distant sleepy memory, and remember you're snug and safe, and your toes aren't even slightly Let's just hope tonight you dream about adventures in Viking ships rather than getting stranded without Wi-Fi. Because honestly, one of those is definitely scarier than the other. But hold on tight, because our journey through the icy Viking world has only just begun, and trust me, it's going to get much colder and stranger before it warms up again. You slowly pull the rough cloak tighter around your shoulders, realizing it smells just like what you'd imagine if your neighbor's wet dog met your grandfather's neglected leather jacket. It's itchy, heavy, and uncomfortably damp, undeniably warm. Welcome to Viking fashion, where style takes a definite backseat to pure survival. Tonight's trendy look, animal pelts and thick furs, courtesy of a large, unfortunate bear who had different weekend plans. The Vikings knew something you've probably forgotten. There's no replacement for good old-fashioned insulation. And that insulation mostly came from fur-bearing animals: beavers, bears, wolves, fox is basically any creature unlucky enough to wander within axe-throwing distance. You might cringe at the ethical questions today, but back then, there wasn't a vegan-friendly polyester alternative to be found. You're currently bundled up in what feels suspiciously like several foxes tied together, their tails tickling your nose annoyingly. You're pretty sure Peter would have a thing or two to say about this, but here's an interesting fact not widely known. The Vikings didn't just toss on these animal hides haphazardly. They had layers, a carefully constructed system for keeping heat close to the body. Imagine layering your clothes on a cold winter morning. Vikings did essentially the same thing, just without the thermal underwear or novelty Christmas sweaters. The inner layers typically consisted of softer animal skins, perhaps rabbit or deer hides turned fur-side in against the skin, offering an immediate warmth barrier. The middle layers would include heavier pelts of wool for bear fur, and finally, a durable outer cloak made from waterproof sealskin or oiled leather. But here's something the history books don't often mention. Tucked between those heavy layers of fur, Vikings would stuff bundles of dried grass or hay. It sounds uncomfortable and itchy, and trust me, it was. Imagine the prickly sensation of straw poking at your sensitive skin all night, almost like sleeping in a bed filled with stale breakfast cereal. Yet, uncomfortable as it was, grass served as surprisingly effective insulation. It created pockets of trapped air that prevented heat from escaping, like a prehistoric version of modern bubble wrap, but admittedly far scratchier. Historians are still debating just how widespread this hay and fur sandwich actually was. Some argue it was common practice, especially among Vikings traveling long distances, while others think it was more of a desperate emergency measure, something you'd resort to if you found yourself freezing on a remote mountainside, cursing your misfortune and longing for a cup of hot chocolate. Now, speaking of discomfort, it's worth mentioning hygiene, something Vikings had a slightly different attitude towards. While you might recoil at the thought of wearing animal skins that had never met soap, Vikings had a clever trick up their sleeve: smoke. They smoked their clothing regularly, not to make it smell like barbecue brisket, though that'd be a welcome side effect, but because smoke from burning juniper branches acted as a natural disinfectant. It killed bacteria, drove away insects, and even prevented mold growth, helping to prolong the life of their precious insulating garments. Still, no matter how effectively smoked your clothing was, there's no escaping the lingering scent. You'd probably find yourself going noseblind after a while because, let's face it, you have bigger concerns than smelling slightly like a charcuterie board at a fancy dinner party. The Vikings weren't exactly fashion icons, but they knew how to prioritize functionality over form. If an outfit kept you alive, it was immediately in style, no questions asked. And though these clothes were bulky and cumbersome, making you waddle like an overdressed penguin, they provided necessary warmth and flexibility to move, fight, or flee essential tasks in Viking daily life. In fact, Vikings became masters of working with what they had available. If you found yourself in their shoes, or more accurately, their fur-lined boots, you'd quickly realize that your designer winter coat is laughably inadequate compared to their tried and tested gear. Vikings had footwear down to a science, too. Boots crafted from reindeer or goat hides, treated with animal fats for waterproofing, kept their toes protected from frostbite. Warm feet were not a luxury, but a necessity. Frozen toes would severely impact your ability to sail, farm, or raid neighboring villages efficiently. You might think fur clothing would weigh Vikings down, slowing their movements, but actually, it was surprisingly functional. Properly prepared furs retained warmth while allowing moisture to escape, preventing them from sweating too much, a potentially deadly problem when temperatures plummet. After all, sweat freezing against your skin is about as pleasant as accidentally stepping on your kid's Lego pieces in the dark, painful, unexpected, and something you'd avoid at all costs. And speaking of avoiding discomfort, Vikings often wore fur-lined hats or hoods, partly because warmth escapes fastest through your head, and partly because, well, frostbite on the ears wasn't exactly trendy. Viking hats weren't horned helmets. By the way, that's mostly Hollywood nonsense designed to make them appear fiercer. Instead, imagine a practical fur cap pulled low over your eyebrows, making you resemble a slightly irritated forest creature. Not intimidating, perhaps, but definitely warmed as you imagine yourself huddled under all these layers. You're probably grateful for modern conveniences like washing machines and deodorants. You might even feel a little spoiled. But tonight, let's give credit where it's due. Vikings had an impressive grasp of survival fashion, cleverly engineered to cope with a climate that tested human limits on a daily basis. So, as you adjust yourself comfortably under your clean, scent-free sheets tonight, maybe send a silent thank you to whoever invented fleece pajamas. And while you drift closer to sleep, feeling warm and safe, picture yourself wrapped in itchy hay and pungent animal pelts, silently grateful that you're just visiting the Viking age, not stuck in it permanently. Because, trust me, you wouldn't want to explain to your coworkers tomorrow why your coat smells suspiciously like smoked bear fur unless you're looking to spice up office gossip. In which case, carry on. Relax now. Let your mind drift away from frozen landscapes and scratchy clothing, and rest easy. Our Viking adventure has plenty more cozy tales to tell before the night is through. You push open a heavy wooden door, stepping into a dimly lit room that stretches far ahead of you, a Viking longhouse. Immediately, the cold seems to recede, not vanishing completely, but becoming more manageable, like your caffeine withdrawal after the first sip of morning coffee. Your eyes adjust slowly, scanning the shadows, noticing how the faint glow of firelight flickers along walls made from timber, earth, and straw. It feels safe, solid, reassuring, though admittedly still colder than the average modern home set at a cozy 72 degrees. You begin to notice something strange about the walls. They're made from compacted earth and clay, reinforced with wood, topped with layers of sod and turf. It's as if someone took the phrase "going green" a bit too literally and decided to grow grass on their roof. But here's the thing. Despite looking like a medieval landscaping project gone slightly wrong, this covered mud-walled structure was surprisingly effective at trapping warmth inside. The thick earthen walls insulated the longhouse, keeping out bitter wind and moisture. Essentially, the Vikings were living inside enormous, sturdy dirt blankets. Sure, it sounds unappealing, especially if your allergies flare up at the mere sight of pollen, but it worked incredibly well. You might sneeze uncontrollably, complain endlessly about the dirt everywhere, and desperately miss your allergen-free climate-controlled home. But the Vikings took pride in this muddy marvel of ancient architecture. Inside the longhouse, it's dark, but comforting. A smoky haze lingers beneath the wooden rafters, partially obscuring your view of animal skins, tools, and shields hanging casually on the walls. It's like someone threw a yard sale, but everything sold is fur-lined, battle-tested, or both. But don't worry, your eyes and lungs will adjust. Though maybe not fast enough to avoid coughing awkwardly at least a dozen times first. Here's another intriguing historical tidbit. Despite the smoke and seemingly hazardous air quality, Vikings rarely built chimneys. Instead, smoke from cooking fires drifted upwards, exiting through small holes in the roof usually. Sometimes, though, the smoke decided it preferred to linger indoors, especially on calm, windless days, swirling lazily around your head, making you squint and cough in mild irritation. It's a stark reminder that Viking life had its share of inconveniences, even while their survival techniques were impressively resourceful. Speaking of those survival techniques, Vikings designed their houses intentionally narrow and elongated, a strategic choice to maximize heat retention. You see, a centrally placed fire pit heated the longhouse efficiently, radiating warmth throughout the entire space. Think of it as an ancient form of central heating minus the thermostat, and with added risk of accidentally setting your home ablaze if you weren't careful. But hey, no technology is perfect, right? In fact, Vikings treated their central fire pit as something sacred, essential to their survival. It was the literal heart of the home, where meals were cooked, stories shared, and warmth provided. Picture everyone gathered close, faces glowing softly in the firelight, quietly grateful for the simple comfort of heat, even while smoke irritated their eyes and clothes absorbed that permanent scent of burnt wood. This probably explains why Vikings preferred dark-colored garments. Soot stains are far less noticeable on black fabric. Historians still debate just how comfortable or uncomfortable these longhouses actually were. Some believe that Vikings adapted readily to the smoky environment, barely noticing it after a while, like how you hardly notice the questionable smell of your favorite fast food restaurant once you've sat there a few minutes. Others argue that constant exposure to smoke caused chronic respiratory problems, something the Vikings simply endured because, well, what's a bit of coughing compared to freezing to death? And if you're imagining privacy, think again. Viking longhouses housed entire families, extended relatives, livestock, and possibly an occasional guest or two, everyone under the same roof, all winter long. Imagine your cousin's noisy chewing echoing nightly through the room, or the comforting lullaby of snoring from your great-uncle Sven. Sure, modern apartment living has its quirks, but at least your roommate isn't an actual cow chewing cud inches from your sleeping face. In the corners of the longhouse, livestock provided extra warmth and companionship, though you probably wouldn't cuddle up with a goat unless things got seriously desperate. Still, these animals served a dual purpose: food and warmth. Livestock body heat contributed significantly to indoor temperatures, essentially turning the longhouse into a combined living room, kitchen, and barn. Functional, certainly. Cozy, maybe, if you ignore certain odors. But let's pause for a moment. to appreciate the sheer ingenuity of these ancient people. Vikings didn't simply endure the cold, they adapted remarkably well, building homes that protected them from temperatures most of us would flee from instantly. The longhouse is a testament to human resilience, creativity, and determination, often overshadowed by tales of Viking raids and warrior bravado. You might even begin to envy their simpler, more sustainable way of life. After all, Vikings lived in homes literally built from earth, grass, and timber around them, harmonizing seamlessly with nature or by it, in a smoky, itchy, mildly claustrophobic kind of harmony. As you sit by the fire in this imagined Viking longhouse, feeling gradually warmer, you realize survival isn't just about enduring hardship, it's about creating comfort within it. And sure, you'd probably trade a year's supply of avocado toast just for a single electric heater. But deep down, you feel oddly respectful of their strength and ingenuity. Tonight, tucked safely beneath your soft blankets, surrounded by your comforting modern conveniences, perhaps spare a moment of gratitude for these long-forgotten builders and survivors. They might have sneezed endlessly, coughed persistently, and inhaled more smoke than is advisable. But they found clever ways to thrive in places most would deem uninhabitable. Now, gently let yourself drift away, secure in your comfortable room. No smoke or animals required, just a warm, restful sleep. And maybe, just maybe, you'll dream tonight of fires crackling in smoky longhouses, reminding you how lucky you are to visit these Viking memories from a safe, comfortable distance. Don't rest well, my friend. We've still got plenty more cold weather secrets to uncover as we continue our journey deeper into the cozy, curious world of the Vikings. You find yourself drawn closer to the fire at the heart of the longhouse, feeling its warmth seep slowly into your bones. The flames dance gently, crackling and popping in a rhythmic, almost hypnotic melody. It's soothing, like one of those lo-fi playlists you put on when studying, except here, there's no skip ad button, and your homework is survival itself. You settle onto a rough wooden bench, stretching your stiff fingers towards the comforting blaze. It's at moments like this you appreciate just how essential fire was, not just for warmth, but for life itself in the Viking Age. The Vikings revered fire, understanding intuitively that it represented more than mere heat. It symbolized safety, nourishment, and community. Imagine a life where the nearest microwave was about 1,000 years away from being invented. Cooking over an open flame was your only option. Meals took patience and skill, roasting meat on spits, boiling soups in heavy iron cauldrons, and baking bread on hot stones. You'd probably burn a few loaves along the way, but the Vikings got the hang of it pretty quickly. They had to. There were no pizza delivery services to fall back on. Here's something peculiar the history books often gloss over. Vikings frequently burned animal bones as fuel. It may sound bizarre, almost like recycling taken to the extreme, but bones burned hotter and lasted longer than ordinary wood. After finishing a feast of roasted deer, rather than discarding leftover bones, Vikings tossed them onto the fire, creating a hotter, steadier flame. This wasn't some eco-friendly gimmick, it was practical ingenuity. Of course, if you're imagining the smoky aroma of burnt bones filling your house, let's just say it wouldn't exactly inspire a popular scented candle today. Historians remained fascinated by this bone-burning habit. Some argue it was primarily practical, a clever tactic born from necessity due to limited fuel sources in colder climates. Others suggest it had deeper symbolic meanings, a way to honor the animals that fed and clothed them. After all, Vikings weren't known for doing things halfway. If burning bones kept them warm and pleased their gods, it was a win-win. You shift slightly on your wooden seat, noticing for the first time the countless tiny scratches and carvings covering its surface. Names, symbols, tiny doodles etched by bored children or thoughtful adults during long winter evenings. You smile quietly, realizing people haven't changed much, whether in the 9th century or now. Everyone gets restless sometimes. Maybe those ancient carvings were the Viking equivalent of scrolling mindlessly on your phone. Minus the eye strain. Returning your gaze to the flames, you ponder the logistics of keeping such a vital fire burning continuously. Fires in Viking households were rarely allowed to go out completely, especially during winter. Families took turns carefully tending embers through the night, often sleeping in shifts. Letting the fire die meant risking frostbite or worse. Reigniting it was a daunting task without matches or lighters. Try rubbing sticks together in sub-zero temperatures at 3 a.m., and you'll quickly understand why this was avoided at all costs. Fire maintenance became a delicate art form. Ashes from earlier fires weren't discarded randomly. Instead, they served a purpose, banking up around hot coals to protect embers from being extinguished by drafts. The Vikings understood airflow too, strategically positioning their fire pits and vents so air would feed, rather than smother, the flames. Think of it as a primitive thermostat without the convenience of complaining to a landlord if things got too cold. But it wasn't all perfect, of course. Sparks occasionally popped from the fire, landing on clothing, blankets, or even the roof. Small fires could break out, requiring quick thinking and even quicker reactions. It's unlikely you'd ever panic more than realizing your house made mostly of dried grass, earth and wood had just caught fire. Luckily, Vikings had contingency plans, always keeping water and sand close by. After all, setting your house ablaze accidentally in the dead of winter wasn't exactly an ideal Viking way to go out yet. Despite these dangers, the fire remained central to Viking life. It provided more than physical warmth, it offered emotional comfort. Families gathered around it, sharing stories, recounting myths, and singing songs. Picture the warmth not just from the flames, but from the laughter and shared camaraderie, knitting together their bonds, making even the harshest winters feel manageable. Fire had another practical use rarely mentioned. Vikings relied on its smoke to preserve food. Meats and fish were hung from rafters above the fire pit, slowly smoked to prevent spoilage through the winter months. Imagine the smoky, salty taste permeating your every meal. Delicious, perhaps not always. Essential, absolutely. If your fridge ever broke down, you'd probably wish you had some smoke-preserved salmon hanging around as backup, though your neighbors might question your choice of kitchen decor. Some historians continue to debate whether the continuous smoky environment contributed negatively to Viking health. Chronic coughing, lung issues, or watery eyes might have been commonplace. But others believe Vikings adapted, perhaps even developing genetic tolerances. After all, you rarely see depictions of Vikings sneezing uncontrollably during their epic battles, though admittedly, that would make their tales far more relatable and hilarious. Now, as you stretch your hands again toward the flame, feeling comfort in its radiance, you might start to understand how the fire became almost sacred. It kept darkness and cold at bay, provided nourishment, preserved food, and offered a warm glow around which communities flourished. Fire wasn't merely functional, it was life-giving. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, cozy in your soft blankets, perhaps spare a grateful thought for the simple flicker of flame. Consider how warmth, something you can summon with the flick of a switch today, once demanded tireless vigilance, ingenuity, and respect. So relax now, feel safe and secure, knowing your own warmth tonight doesn't require tending a smoky fire pit. Let the gentle crackling of imagined flames lull you deeper into restful slumber, whispering softly of times long past, reminding you gently how lucky you are to experience this ancient warmth from the comfort of your modern bed. Sleep well, friend. Our Viking journey has much more warmth and wonder still waiting just beyond the glow of this imagined fire.